So welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers Experience podcast, where we have candid conversations with amazing women sharing their career journeys. My next guest is Sara Russell, who is not a newbie to the podcast. She's marketing director at 5874, which is a digital agency, and founder of the Women's Domain. Welcome back, Sara.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be back. When was
I
the last one?
know.
A year ago, wasn't it?
Literally a year ago. So we're sort of anniversarying your appearance and you telling me to just start the damn podcast, basically.
Yeah, just do it.
I know, just do it, as Nike would say. It's the
Yeah,
best tagline, but it applies to everything in life as well.
definitely.
So I've introduced you obviously as Sara Russell, marketing director at a amazing digital agency. You're doing a really great job of connecting the dots and storytelling for brands. But talk to me about, it's been a year, a lot's been happening. You're still at 5874, which is great.
I love how it rolls off the tongue when you say it.
Honestly, I'm going to tell you something. I had to write it down a few times.
Yeah,
It's one of those things. But when you told me the backstory of the name, of how that came about, I think that's how I've managed to remember it. So I think always storytelling is a very good, something about telephone numbers. Am I right?
yes. So, for those of us over a certain age, you'll remember that back in the old days, there was a thing called a landline that you would have, and my family in particular would do this, that every time someone would call, you'd pick up the phone and you'd say the last four digits of your phone number. So when I was growing up, it was 5050, and that was and I think your family used to say the name, like it's the whatever
Yes.
residence, as it were. But yeah, 5874 is the last four digits of our of the two brothers that founded the business, so Rupert Cross and Richard Peachy, and they're two brothers, and that was the last four digits of their family telephone number growing up. So yeah, it's evolved, etc., but that's the heart of it.
Exactly. So let's talk about evolution. Since our last conversation, how has the marketing landscape changed and evolved in your sector? We know everyone's talking about AI and learning language models and machine learning, but how have things been for you, Sara?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that it's been a slog. I think everyone, not even just in our industry, the last 12, maybe even 18 months, you've had to really work, don't swear, Sara, your backside off, to get to achieve what you want to achieve. So yeah, it's definitely been a slog, but I think really you sort of hit the nail on the head. AI is the biggest thing that, particularly as marketers, that we're talking about and acknowledging and working out how best we use it in order to complement what we do. So there's a lot of that, a lot about the hyper personalization, those kind of things. Ultimately, how we can really drive better customer loyalty, better customer satisfaction. It's always about those two things. So yeah, AI is definitely the buzz term for the last 12 months.
And it feels like, if we think about, once again, the good old days, sometimes the principles of what we used to do way back when really resonate now. Of bricks and mortar in the past were really about customer service, customer experience. What sort of happened over the years is they've reduced staff, trying to be as lean as possible. And then you walk into the store and they say, we can order it for you online. And so frustrating, because most of the time I want to go in there for the experience. I've come in to shop and I want that experience there. What I'm seeing now is it's now going the other direction, where a focus definitely on customer experience, but now customer experience on an online perspective, because we know we have a short attention span. As consumers, the dwell time has just reduced, and customers' attention online is so challenging now, not just from an economic perspective, but because everyone's fighting for market share, don't you think?
100%. But I think for me, that is why, and I am old school, that is why content is king. So all of these great tools that we have at our disposal are fantastic, but unless you've got the right message, the right story, and you're connecting to the right people, it's not going to help you. So I think at the bricks and mortar, particularly in marketing, content is so crucial.
Definitely. I mean, we're hoping that it's going back to that with brands that are falling away, who were so, already at their end stage, sort of the end of their life cycle, and have sort of left the market. But we have some great innovative brands that hopefully are making your life as an agency more interesting despite the competitive landscape out there.
Absolutely. We have one of our clients, Furniture Box. They have a really great sort of story and background, which is just, it's an absolute pleasure for me to be able to kind of pull that narrative out, and to the integrations, the implementations. That's all really interesting and great, but it's able to complement it with that kind of foundation of the two founders of the business and how they run the business, and the achievements and how they started selling furniture whilst at secondary school and stuff like that. So yeah, it's absolutely being able to pull out those stories are really, really good.
Definitely. So let's talk about the women's domain, which, you described as lifting others while you climb. When you
Mm.
started it all those years ago, sort of on International Women's Day, saying, I don't want us to be just a post on Instagram. Really strong advocate. What are some notable developments or lessons learned in this area since we last spoke?
I've learned quite a lot, actually. There's been quite a few lessons I've learned, Antola. Listen, for me, it's the amount of work we still have to do. Now, the conversations that I have, particularly in our industry, I think for me, it's like half the people, they get it. They understand what we're trying to achieve. They want, like, people like you, Antola, who are the first to put your hands up and go, how can I help? What can I do? Like proactivity, all of that. And I get the other half of people that sort of pat me on the head and say, well done, you, women supporting women, well done. And then, but it's not what I'm trying to sort of, and I think this is work that I have to do, and this isn't a woe is me for me. This is, I understand that I have work to do in order to articulate what we're really trying to achieve here and talk to the right people. But it's fundamentally for me about how including women in your business is good for your business. We are all here to make money, okay? Women like making money. Women are really good at making money, and they're really good at making you money. And I think there's this shift now where I'm trying to get people to understand that this isn't just a women's only community. This isn't just raising awareness and celebrating all the women's success we have in our industry. All of that is really important and crucial. But it's what we are doing as an industry to change the way in which we work so that we include more women and we see more women prosper and actually start leading some of these businesses as well, because that's the cultural shift we're aiming for here. And from a brand side perspective, I want to see more female-led brands thriving, because statistically they are more profitable, yet receive less investment in general terms. So all those things, that's where I'm aiming for with the women's domain. And I think the lessons I've learned is that there's a lot of convincing that I have to do, and we as a community have to do, in order to start seeing that change be enacted in a much speedier way.
That's so interesting that you've shared the lessons learned in that way, because a lot of the times when you have an idea and you bring it to fruition and you had probably 3 or 4 fundamental things that you wanted to achieve at the beginning, but then the realization is saying, okay, I need to be maybe more clear about the outcomes I know that the women's domain can bring. Obviously, what it means to you as the founder, with the emotion and the empathy and the purpose behind that. But actually, what is the outcome? What are you trying to achieve? If you were to present the women's domain to a CFO, he wants to know, okay, what are the key KPIs you're working towards here, isn't it?
Absolutely. But I think also what we're trying to achieve has evolved since we've started, because we very much started the women's domain knowing and being very transparent about the fact we didn't have the answers. We didn't really we weren't really clear on what we absolutely needed to or wanted to achieve, other than something positive. But it was about listening. It was about talking to the various women and men and everyone in our industry, and sort of learning about what their experiences are, what their ideas are, and then sort of trying to get an idea as to, okay, what work is there to be done? Because my experience as a woman, and when my career it's probably been very different to the experiences that you've had in your career. So it's learning about the things that you don't know, and trying to sort of like that empathy is really important, and listening and understanding how you can then shape what you're trying to achieve in a very kind of non-static way.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day about, I think how the main thing that a lot of people don't understand is it's not about we're looking for equality, we're looking for that equity, because like you said, the experiences are different. My starting point, or how my career came to how to be, is probably a different path because of the way I was brought up, because of the opportunities I may or may not have had.
Yeah.
The journey has been different. So whether it's from an HR perspective, so recruiters looking at your CV, they can't look at it as a black and white. You didn't go to this business school, you didn't work at this, you didn't work in management consulting, so they write you off. Or your path has been this and this and this. You didn't grow up in the startup accelerator. You need to look at everyone as an individual and actually what can they offer in that regard. I think there's a mindset shift, isn't it, that needs to happen as well, whether it's for women or men.
The
That
whole
mindset
spectrum, yeah.
shift. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, 100%. That's exactly what it is. And it's not an overnight thing. It's and that, in a way, that's why it is a slog. And a lot of the women that I do continuously talk to, in a way, who have become mentors to me, or friends within this, and I include you in that as well, Antola, that I'm not the first person to come up with something like this. I wasn't the first person in e-commerce to go, hang on a minute, why are there not many women leaders in e-commerce? This is a conversation that other women and other men have been having for a very long time. But I think it's how we can combine our efforts, and that's when we will start to see some real change. I'm an internal optimist when it comes to that. I acknowledge the hard work involved, and sometimes all I want to do is crawl into a corner with a bottle of Rioja and a sharing bag of Doritos. But that's not always the answer. Not always.
Yeah, we have our moments. So if someone's listening for the first time, just describe to them, what is the women's domain and what is the purpose of the women's domain?
So the women's domain has, if I could be so bold as to say, is a movement within the e-commerce industry where we are a community of women, men, non-binary, whoever, the whole spectrum, where we are actively trying to address and challenge the issues that we face, that in our roles and in our careers, and how we can ensure that more women in particular are being attracted to our industry and are also able to thrive within our industry. And we do that, and we've been working through that with our podcast, with our in-person events, by having panel discussions that are not of the norm, I guess, within our industry. Really trying to, digital transformations are great. I will always talk about those, but it's very much about the impact that having a more diverse workforce will have on your business, and how we can see that e-commerce be the industry that really, really strives for that. So we talk about anything from APIs to menopause. And I don't like to, nothing's off the table, put it that way, when it comes to the women's domain. But ultimately, it is about women empowerment. It's about empowering the individuals within our industry to really thrive in the career that they want, that they deserve, and that they're ultimately very successful at as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've attended your events, and it's great to see that you have a very diverse panel, from someone who started their business in their bedroom with £1,000 and have scaled it up, to those who are working in the tech space and talking about how they've sort of risen through the ranks or had challenges. And then on the other hand, someone talking about having their children and what that means. So really very broad, because a lot of the times I, watch a lot of interviews, panels that are happening in the US or in EU and so on. And sometimes you feel like some of these women are out of reach. Of course, they've had an amazing career, but you feel, I can't connect with you because I feel like your path is out of reach, which it shouldn't be.
No, I know.
But the women's domain brings it to light, to say, actually, I see myself in this person. in one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, my ultimate dream with the women's domain, not dream, but something that we actually do, like we don't make it a membership. So it's not about you paying hundreds of pounds a month to have these exclusive invites to these events. I do ask for sponsorship, because for me it's about making sure that you have a woman who is just starting out in her career being able to network for free with a woman like yourself, Antola, who can share so much insight and experience, and without them feeling like it's unattainable for them because they're earning 25 grand and they've still got all the rent, etc. to pay. They can't pay £500 a month to be part of an exclusive London members club, etc. So it has to have that inclusivity for me, and to make people, I think we learn really well if we're able to mix and have those organic conversations in that way. Because yeah, if you see a very successful woman on a panel on a big stage and you're sat amongst 300 other people, you don't feel like at the end of it you could go up and talk to her and ask her some questions. You just wouldn't. But if you're at a women's domain event where there's 20 people and you can bring a mate, I don't mind, you can go up and have these conversations, and everyone's there to just help each other and to learn from each other and to have a bit of a laugh as well, and to laugh at ourselves and to find the joy in what we do.
Yeah.
I think that's a really special thing.
Definitely, it's about creating accessible, inclusive spaces. Because,
Yeah,
yeah, some of these networking events, unless you're invited, they're very expensive, Just even to be in the
totally.
room, that's a cost that unfortunately, most companies, they don't see it as training and development, so they won't pay for it.
Absolutely. But also, if they did pay for it, I mean, I know when I first started in e-commerce, Rupert used to drag me. He didn't drag me, I was very willing to go. But there was all these partner events and stuff that I didn't know anybody. Everybody knows Rupert, so I would find myself sort of like attached to him. But if I didn't have him at the beginning, introducing me, helping me build my confidence, mentoring me through that, and I'd have to rock up to these events, these partner summits, etc., where I knew someone's name but didn't really know anything about them, I'd find it really hard not to just stand at the wall with a glass of prosecco and just hope no one talks to me. Because sometimes there's not a lot of women in the room.
Mm.
There's always quite a lot of men in the room, which is not that's fine, but at the same time, it's really daunting. And I think whether you have been in the workplace for a year or 10 years, it's still a big ask for people. So yeah, there is all of that to contend with.
Yeah, it's humanizing those experiences.
Mm.
So thank you for explaining what the women's domain is, and how it is an inclusive environment. So we will put in the show notes how people can sign up to the newsletter, find
Yeah,
out about the next events, so that we have more women and men. We need our allies rocking up to the events and just continuing the movement as well.
absolutely. And I would say that we have some wonderful male allies that for the women's domain who are always proactive and supportive, and are showing up, more importantly, as well when we need them to, which is fantastic.
So let's talk about the Women's Accelerator program, which you announced at your
Mm.
last event.
Yeah.
And it sort of came off the heels of shout out to Megan, who then said, "What can we do? What's the next? But how can I help?" She was amazing with that, saying, "Okay, how can I help? How can I support?" And you gave us a sneak peek of what was to come. But I think you can now talk about it as to what that is and what your vision is for the women's domain in this next step.
Yeah, so I think we're entering our third year, I think, for the women's domain, and I really, I was sort of having conversation with Rupert, and we were both, what's next? Because I think we could do another year of podcasts and in-person events and having these panel discussions, which are they're fun, they're great, they have great conversations, but what are we actually? Let's really try and aim big here. And after speaking to a lot of women in the industry, particularly brand side, that investment issue keeps coming up about the disparity in investment and things like that, and how the female-led businesses are actually so innovative and profitable as well, and how we as the women's domain can really hone in on that and support it. So yes, we are launching the Women's Domain Accelerator. It's going to be It's quite a substantial program actually, and we are going to release details of that imminently. I'm literally doing the final touches to the landing page. I'm very excited. But ultimately, we're going to invite 10 brands into our program, where we're going to offer yes, that kind of the virtual get-togethers, the masterclasses. We're going to have expertise across the e-commerce space. We already have partners who are throwing their hands up, excited to get involved with this, and initiating some mentorship programs, etc. So obviously, I'm looking at you, Antola, as someone that I really want to be a mentor. Because
I'm in.
She's in. I've got it here first, guys. But ultimately, it's about trying. The aim is for these brands to, at the end of this program, to give them the tools and the resources they need to really accelerate their growth, to expand their network, and really gain some proper insight into how they can grow their business, particularly their e-commerce business. So it's not necessarily for those brands who are literally just starting. They've already established their brand. They're already on e-commerce essentially, on whatever way, but it's what those next steps are. And we're offering it to a 6 to 12 month program, which is substantial. But for me, it's about offering some real takeaways here, and really putting the right people together and taking that time to really work with the individuals rather than just a one size fits all.
So it's now bringing it to life, isn't it, to actual individuals. So not just people in a room who are coming to events, but now connecting the dots, isn't it, between brand, people, and
Yeah.
and empowering them in the next way.
Yeah.
Exciting, but scary as well, isn't it?
It's daunting, and we have so obviously myself, Rupert Cross, the founder of 5874, Michaela Weber, who's the senior vice president at Big Commerce as well. This is our baby, and we are utilizing the contacts we have in order to connect the right people to the right brand, to the right individual, because like we say, depending on the 10 brands that are actually enter the program, their needs and wants are going to be very different. So it's about understanding what they are, taking the time to understand that, and utilizing all the contacts we have within the industry to bring the right people together.
That's amazing. It just feels like you've just taken it up a notch, and I guess elevating not just yourself, but 5874, and just really contributing to the broader e-com marketing community, isn't it? Which was your intent from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly what it is. And also, we are, as an agency, B Corp certified. So being able to putting our purpose and values as at the forefront of whatever strategic objectives that we have is really important to us. And this is one of the many ways in which we want to do that.
I think that's the great thing about B Corp, is that it's not just a stamp of approval for a consumer perspective, but it makes you actually reflect and actually ask yourself the question saying, okay, if we're about people, what are we really about? What does that mean? Whether it's our external, internal stakeholders, and putting those key 3 points as well to say, okay, this is what we're going to focus on. And then purpose, people throw that word around a lot, but to define it for yourself and as an agency, and to say, okay, these are things we know we can actually achieve, and starting small. It's always interesting when people have, or brands have, these larger objectives which are linked to political ones, and we want to be net zero, and say, but what does that actually mean? What are you actually going to do? When you can set tangible ones which can support the teams around you, and you can actually see the benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you're right. It is quite difficult though as an e-commerce agency when it comes to sustainability, and we're all remote now as well. So we have to pivot in how we are, how, what our ESG etc. is, and what we're doing to achieve what we want to achieve. But the women's domain is a great tool for us, because on one hand it has and continues to attract more women into our business, because they see that's what we're championing and that's something that they want to be involved with. So we saw an increase in how many female developers we had within the business as well, which was a big thing for me, because when we started there was one female web developer, and we saw that increase as the campaign went on. But also how we can support those female-led brands and female-driven brands, etc., and making sure that we're using the skills and the expertise we've got to really help those businesses thrive.
Reflecting on yourself, so there might be a marketing director listening to this, or an aspiring marketing director. Your role is very broad and not the classic definition of a marketing director, I would say. What are some of the lessons that you would like to impart in terms of knowledge? So from joining 5874 in this role, but it's sort of evolved over the years, and obviously now with the women's domain and the Accelerator program. What are some of the lessons that you've learned about yourself and about how this role has evolved over time?
I think if someone was to ask me for me, it's about don't conform. Think outside the box. What are you going to bring? What is the thing that you bring to the table that the other person that applied for the job wouldn't have brought? Now, for me personally, for 58, it was the women's domain. It was that narrative of women in the industry, etc. Yes, it's not something that Rupert wasn't aware of before I joined, and it was always something he was talking about. But it was having me on board and me bringing it to the table with him and working together, in which we were able to succeed in that. But it's with marketing, it's such a creative role that sometimes we do get kind of bogged down with the AI and the data analytics and the spreadsheets, and all of that is, like I say, really, really important, and it helps your role. But don't forget, it's a creative role, and there's to think outside the box, to take a step back and really hone in on what that compelling message is. What is that message you're trying to get out there? And when it comes to brand awareness in particular, as the agency or whatever you're working in, to really kind of take the time and create that kind of holistic kind of message that you want to put out there. So yeah, don't conform. It's not a tick box exercise. Marketing there's definitely an analytical side to it, but yeah, don't forget it's creative as well, and that's a really important part of it.
And has your view to networking and changed as well? Because I remember when we spoke, we talked about, it's about going to events, etc. I sort of feel like over time I've learned that networking is about people. That's been the biggest lesson for me.
Yes. So my views to networking, they have changed. I am far more comfortable, particularly, I really love this industry. I really love the people within it. I've made some wonderful friends, also colleagues and connections. So actually now I'm quite comfortable going to an event most of the time, without holding Rupert's hand, metaphorically, obviously. But yeah, I think it is about the people. It's about you giving yourself a pep talk and sort of remembering that have something of value to offer, that what you say and what you think and your experiences are valuable, that there are people within the room who do want to talk to you. And like you say, it's absolutely about connecting with people. Don't be the arsehole in the room. Really go out there and talk and understand and connect and listen to people.
Yeah, that's a really good point about you are of value. Just even just as a mantra when you wake up every day, to say you are valuable. You are here in this world to offer something. So
Yeah.
you use that when you go out there. That's a good one. I will take that with me actually.
Well, and don't be afraid of what you don't know. So if you're involved in a conversation where you feel like it's totally over your head, ask a question. There's no stupid question. There's a lot of tech speak sometimes, which kind of, it's not that I can't understand it. It's just, I think sometimes everyone's brains work differently. And when you hear a lot of acronyms, like some people's brains, like mine, sort of shut off and go, and does not compute. But just stop, take a breath, ask a question. And actually, I've never encountered a situation where people kind of roll their eyes at me. It's like, they're really actually excited to explain what they mean. They're really excited to go into more detail. So yeah, that's it. Just remember your value, ask questions and listen. That's all you need to do.
I remember last year I'd set myself a goal that I wanted to attend startup pitches, just to understand what are investors looking for, what are the trends in terms of what businesses are starting, in terms of what are going to be the businesses of the future. And I tell this story all the time because they were using words such as, or acronyms, POC, MVP. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm saying, why are they talking about person of color or people
Yeah.
of color and most valuable player? Because I'm thinking basketball terms. And I had to then ask someone who was sitting next to me. I said, what? Of course, I could have Googled, but I said, excuse me, could you just tell me what is a POC and an MVP? And he was like, it's okay to ask as well. So proof of concept
Yeah.
and minimal viable, what is it? Product. Product market fit was another one. So there were all these acronyms and they were throwing them around. And I said, thank God there was someone there to explain.
Yeah.
And it was me taking myself out of my comfort zone because I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand the startup space, the investor space from a practical perspective versus just reading loads of books. And it was me just jumping in there. And I feel like now I can read a pitch deck. I understand what the key points are, what investors will be looking for. So even when I'm dealing with brands from a consultancy perspective that are probably looking to bring in investment, all the terminology is now in my head. But that was a big learning curve for me. So never stop learning, isn't it? There's always something out there.
Absolutely. But I think, you and I might learn in the same way where you kind of have to drive. I've never been, I can absorb information, obviously, but I think just reading it off a book or a slide deck or something, I need to sit in the room. I need to really get to grips with, and actually proactively and practically get involved with something in order to immerse myself in that knowledge. So, yeah, there's all those different tools, etc., you can do and ways of working, which will help you.
Yeah. And what are you seeing in terms of the young workforce that you have coming in? What's inspiring you about the next generation that you're bringing in to 5874?
I think their creativity, their sense of value. I think they've got a real confidence, which is really great to see of what they can offer, and even those that are literally just starting out and don't have a wealth of experience, etc., in the workplace. But what they do have is a tenacity to really learn and to grow, and I think that's been really exciting to see.
I agree. I think also them embracing technology and just being swifter. I take the approach of, okay, what can we learn from them that will probably help the business and help the bottom line? And how
Yeah.
can we embed that in the processes or lack of processes that might be there within an organization is key.
Yeah, I think they've also seen a lot more self-made millionaires than I have growing up. So they've got that to aspire to as well, which is fantastic. But yeah, there's definitely a confidence there, which is really, really good to see.
So circling back, Trailblazer takeaway tips. We always end the podcast with 3 tips you'd love to share. What would they be?
I didn't prepare those, Antola. 3 tips I'd love to share. Just be you. And that's something that Megan Stabler once said to me after many of her imposter syndrome-esque comments that I started making. She just sort of shut me right down and went, just be you, because there's no one else like you. Like, you're the only one that's like you. Just be you, and that's what you can, that's more than enough. Don't conform. Like, always remember your value in that way and the ideas that you have, and see them through. I think there's a lot of times where I know in my career that I have an abundance of ideas that I don't write down, or I start and then I get distracted and things like that. Just really try and start something, finish it, particularly if you have that, if you think it's a good thing. And I don't know, this is probably really flippant, but if you're not having fun, it's not worth it. I know that sounds really blasé, but in everything that I do, I was saying to you before we started recording that I'm the co-chair of my son's school's PTA. Now, I don't need to do that. I certainly don't have time to do that, but it's fun and I've made a lot of friends with it. If I wasn't having fun, I wouldn't do it. If I wasn't having fun at 5/8, if I wasn't having fun with the women's domain and really enjoying it, there wouldn't be any point in doing it. So do what serves you. If it's not serving you, leave it alone, move on.
Brilliantly summarized. Sarah, I just
Really?
want to
Because it
say,
sounds like Is that
Well,
not?
it's the ones you didn't prepare that are the most authentic because it's coming from the heart.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to say thank you because you've been such a big advocate and supporter of me in the podcast. And when I think 55 episodes in and all the amazing women who I've met virtually across the globe, it's all actually because you just said, just do it, just go for it. And if anyone watches the first interview done, there's been so much progress made as well. We had to record twice and we had sound issues and all of this
It's
stuff.
fine. I had wine, so I was good.
I know that's always good. That's always a good thing to have on the side. But thank you for being a positive inspiration, positive disruptor in the industry, in the sector. And 3 years in with the women's domain, really excited about the Women's Accelerator program that's coming up and all the things that can be done really to empower women in the industry, in the sector, and have our allies supporting us along the way. So thank you so much.
Thank you, but could say the same for you. Thank you for leading by example, Antola, and producing such a brilliant podcast and being consistent with it, which has been brilliant to see as well. But for always showing up, and that makes such the world of difference to women like me. So thank you for that.
Awesome. So, audience, that was the Trailblazers Experience podcast. Where to find us? Please tell another woman about the podcast and remember to like, follow, share, subscribe. We do need all those important things and elements to feed the algorithm and grow the podcast. Thank you very much.